before I start on this video, I probably need to explain that when I discuss particular days of the trial, rather than be confusing because I'm in Australia, you've got different times, different dates, yada yada, I'm going to try to refer to them as like day 4, day 5, etc., as opposed to today or yesterday, because today for me is yesterday for you, I guess. And sometimes today for me, as in date-wise, you guys haven't got there yet, just to be confusing. So, the information that I've used for this video comes from Lauren from Hidden True Crime. She's been at the courthouse virtually every day. She's been doing the early morning campouts, and she's brilliant at taking notes while she's there. She does a lunchtime live stream, which for me means getting up at 3:30 in the morning because I'm just so stuck on this trial right now. And she also does an evening recap, which is much easier for me because that is late morning, sort of roughly lunchtime. So she does 2 lives a day on the trial, and she is so good with her information. Not only does she go through what she's found out and what she's got in her own notes, but the people who are attending the trial are now sharing details and basically adding to each other's understanding. So there's a real community there that are working to make sure that they give us the best information they can. So I will add the link for her channel and the link for her live stream in the description for this video. I highly recommend you going and checking out what she has to say. She is quite possibly one of the most impartial, unbiased commentators in this case, which I really appreciate. I do struggle a bit with some of the people who are attending the trial. When they do their live streams, you can tell that they have a slightly biased lean to what they're saying, and it makes me question the not necessary accuracy, but if they are reporting with a bias as well and not giving important information that should probably be given out. So in this video, I'm looking at the information from one witness from the 23rd of October, day 5, I believe. And this is all relating to Abby's phone. So this was a witness who had done a data retrieval from Abby's phone, and this is basically talking about the information that was gleaned from her phone. I'm going to look at the timeline specifically and the information that comes from her phone and some of the interesting questions that have come as a result and some of the things that have been verified as a result. So I'll go straight through the timeline first, and then I'm going to double back to a few things, or a number of things, that I'll be touching on during the timeline. So the timeline starts at 1:41 in the afternoon that the girls went missing. And at this time, Libby sent a Snapchat. She sent another one straight after at 1:42. Both these Snapchats were sent while she was still in Kelsey's car. So at the time that those 2 Snapchats were sent, the girls were in Kelsey's car being driven to the trails. Now, the next thing that comes up on the timeline is the 2:05 Snapchat. We are all very much familiar with that Snapchat. Many of us first saw that 7.5 years ago. That is the Snapchat that shows Abby on the Monon High Bridge. Now, I know that a lot of the information that comes from this phone data is stuff that we do already know, but I'm going to go through it all in chronological order because it's really good to be able to tie it all together, and I think too it comes as a reminder in terms of the timeline overall. So while we know that it was 2:05 for the Snapchat video, it's still worth fitting it into the timeline. So moving on, at 2:13, as most people know now, Libby's phone made a video recording. Now we know now that that video recording was a 43-second recording, which was done of Bridge Guy on the Monan High Bridge, and it ended with the ominous guys down the hill. Now, what's really interesting here is that the next thing that comes up on the phone is an attempt to unlock the phone at 2:14. So we have the video being recorded at 2:13 and an attempt to unlock the phone at 2:14. The attempt was unsuccessful, and I'll come back to that after I finish going through the timeline. Now, moving on in the timeline, the next thing that was recorded was at 2:31, and providing that Lauren has her times correct, and I'm thinking that she has verified all her times with others that were in the trial, so I haven't actually double checked from other content creators and other people who were present, because I did spend a lot of time listening to her live stream and Andrea Burkhart's live streams this morning, so I haven't really had time to go and verify the times. But the time given by Lauren is that at 2:31 it is recorded that the phone changed elevation by roughly 2 floors. This is apparently the equivalent of roughly 40 feet. And this is something else that I'm going to get back to after I finish the timeline, because I have questions about this. Now, at 2:32, so you've got that event at 2:31, and then at 2:32 p.m, this is recorded as being the last time that the phone moved. So the phone stopped moving at 2:32 p.m, and it is not recorded as having moved again until after the girls were found and it was retrieved as evidence. So the phone did not move again from its location after 2:32 p.m. in the afternoon. And I'll come back to that as well. Now, the next thing that is discussed time-wise, and it's something that we've heard from the defence team. I will pause here, and if you are familiar with my channel, you will recognise that sound in the background as my chihuahua asleep and snoring very loudly. I push on when that occurs because otherwise I would never get any videos recorded. So, the next time we have is 4:33 a.m. And this is the one that the defence team was in a real buzz about, because this is when there were 19 SMS messages that all went in to Libby's phone at the one time. And this is significant, and it's also something that I will come back to. After 4:33 a.m, there are no more messages or phone call attempts recorded. Now, the final time that has been recorded for Libby's phone is 10:32 a.m, and that's the following morning, so that's roughly 2 hours before they found the girls. And this is apparently when the last data was recorded, which basically means this is when the phone powered down. The battery went flat and the phone powered down. So one thing that has been said is that the phone was never manually turned off. The phone was on the entire time until the battery ran flat, when it finally powered down at 10:32 a.m. So the phone was never turned off, and that's significant, and that's also something that I'll come back to. So there's a few other things that came out about the phone which don't necessarily fit into the timeline. They're just bits of information. One, which I've already mentioned, is that the phone was never actually manually turned off. So it was basically running the whole time until the battery ran out at 10:32 a.m. and it powered down on its own. The second bit of information, which is quite possibly the most significant information from all this phone data, is that the Snapchat photo, which was taken of Abby on the bridge, was not found on Libby's phone. That is something really significant. I'm going to come back to that because I'm going to go back through the things that I highlighted in chronological order because I think it's just the most logical way of doing it, and it also, I think, answers things along the way so that by the time I get to the Snapchat data, I have probably answered a lot of that in the first place. So the first thing that comes up in the timeline in chronological order is the attempt to unlock the phone at 12:14. You have the recording at 12:13 and then an attempt to unlock the phone at 12:14. Now, we could say that is a minute after, but we can't say that's a minute after, really. We're just saying that, according to the log says 12:13 and then 12:14. So it could have been like only 10 seconds after the recording ended. Or it could be that the recording was accidentally ended by someone, whichever of the girls had the phone at that stage, because we know that they did share the phone. But let's just, for argument's purpose, say Libby had the phone the whole time. Let's say that she tried to put the phone out of sight of Bridge Guy after he'd said, "Guys down the hill." In her panic, she pressed the button on the side, which basically would have locked the phone and ended the recording. That to me seems like the most logical explanation, and I think probably at that point in time she probably wanted to start the recording again and was trying to unlock it, but in her panic probably just couldn't get her finger in the right spot to unlock the phone. If she was trying to be really careful not to let Bridge Guy see that she had her phone and was trying to record him, then it makes sense that she would also be trying to unlock it without making it obvious that she was trying to unlock it. And all it takes is you just not managing to put your finger in the right spot with the fingerprint thing on your phone. I'm trying to think. I'm pretty certain that iPhone 6 did have the fingerprint option. So I'd say, yeah, no, it did, because we know that it came out a few days earlier that the phone was actually set that it could be unlocked with both Libby's and Abby's fingerprints. They shared the phone. So it did have the fingerprint option. So my speculation is that what actually happened is that in the panic of this guy telling them to get down the hill, then Libby accidentally locked the phone, ended the recording, and was wanting to restart recording. But in the panic, and you can imagine panicking and also trying to unlock a phone, that would be really hard. I'm not sure that I could do it. And if she's trying to make sure that he can't see the phone as well, That's three things that are going to cause an issue. So, to me, I can see what must have happened here. And that is that simply the attempt to unlock the phone would have been Libby attempting to unlock it. She must have accidentally locked it in the panic of trying to hide it from Bridge Guy, in the panic of this guy telling them to get down the hill, and, you know, in the panic of knowing that they had nowhere to go. She's locked the phone. She's tried to unlock it again. She's a savvy girl. Sounds like she was really thinking. And that must have been part of her plan. You know, maybe she was going to try and ring someone, or maybe she was going to try and record again. Who knows? But unfortunately, didn't manage to unlock it. Now, moving along, and this is, to me, a little bit confusing. And this is where it talks about the change in elevation, the rather significant change in elevation at 2:31. And we know that it's recorded at 2:32 that the phone stopped moving. Once again, that doesn't mean that these were 1 minute apart. This could mean that perhaps at 2:31 and 50 seconds it was recorded as a change of elevation, and then at 2:32:01 or something it stopped moving. So we can't exactly know. They haven't given us seconds in terms of that timeline. They've only given us times. So we don't know exactly how long it was between the change in elevation and the phone stopping moving and not moving again. But to me, a change in elevation of 2 floors, which they say is roughly 40 feet, just before the phone stopped moving, we know where the phone ended up. The phone was underneath a shoe and underneath Abby when it stopped moving. So, in terms of that, we know that that wasn't a rapid change in elevation. It's not like the phone was up a tree or something. And what I find interesting is that we know that Libby was covered in blood. They haven't said that the phone was covered in blood. So I'm thinking that perhaps at some point in time that the phone ended up with Abby. Whether it's because it was in the pocket of Libby's jeans, which we know were put onto Abby, or whether Libby handed the phone to Abby for some reason. Either way, it sounds like Libby did not touch that phone after she was injured, because there was clearly no blood on that phone. My thoughts are that the phone was perhaps stashed in Libby's trousers, and that we know that there was dirt on Abby's back, meaning that she was on the ground naked at some point in time before being redressed. So to me, that suggests that Bridge Guy redressed her. So is it possible that that phone fell out of the pocket of Libby's jeans and landed on the ground underneath the shoe and underneath Abby as she was being redressed? But it still doesn't explain why it records that change in elevation. I could understand that had that occurred at 2:14 or 2:15. But for it to be recorded at 2:31 is odd. Whether or not it's just a delay in it being recorded, or whether perhaps it was just somehow violently dropped at that point in time, and then Abby ended up on top of it, and maybe it being violently dropped was recorded as a significant change in elevation. I'm not sure. I'm also not sure how significant it is, but that's the best that I can come up with in terms of trying to explain that. Now, the data of the phone stopping moving at 2:32, when you look at that alongside the data showing that the phone was never manually turned off, that the phone remained on until it powered down at 10:32 in the morning, that basically blows one of the defence's arguments out the window completely. Because we know that the defence were trying to argue that the girls had been abducted and then returned at some point in time to the location where they were found. The fact that we now know that the phone never moved after 2:32 p.m. tends to throw that theory out the window completely. Also, the phone having never been turned off throws that theory out the window completely also, because part of their argument rests on these SMS messages going through at 4:33 a.m. or 4:32. Now, the thing with that, there were other things recorded prior to the 4:32, such as attempts at FaceTiming, so things that were basically iOS kind of recorded data were recorded at different times prior to 4:32, whereas the SMS data is recorded as all having gone through at 4:32 a.m. Now, there's, to me, a few reasons for this. The defence claims that that could only have happened were someone to have actually picked up the phone and either turned it on or moved it. And we now know from the data of the phone that that did not ever occur. So that raises the question of how come all these things came through at 4:32:43 a.m. Well, I think it's pretty easy when it comes to SMS messages. How often have you sent someone a message and it's taken a detour and it's taken forever to get to them? SMS messages don't always go through instantly. How often do you message someone and say, I'm on my way, I'll be there in half an hour? You get there and they're not ready and they're like, I didn't get the SMS, and then suddenly the SMS comes through after you've arrived. It happens frequently. So, and we're talking technology from 7.5 years ago. So, to me, that's not significant. I think that's just something with the towers and the communication with the towers and the phone. For some reason, all the SMS messages came through at that time. Now, it was said that in terms of the iOS stuff, like the attempts at FaceTime and such, that them coming through at different times doesn't necessarily mean that they didn't actually reach the phone at 4:32 at the same time, but that with SMS messages, the time that they arrive at the phone is when they are recorded, whereas with iOS stuff, the time that they sent is the time that they are recorded. So it's possible that the various iOS things also arrived at 4:32:43 a.m, but are recorded based on the time that they sent from wherever. But I think the takeaway from all that is that it is essentially irrelevant. I think there is the SMS messages coming through, 19-something messages coming through at 4:32 a.m. when you look at it logically, knowing that A, the phone never moved again after 2:32 p.m, B, the phone was never manually turned off. That means that it is something to do with the phone communication with the tower, nothing more. So it's actually not significant at all, and that blows that part of the argument out of the water for the defence team. Now, the last thing that I'm going to talk about is the missing Snapchat photo. And this was something which raised questions. The jury have been really good at asking questions of witnesses. And this was one of the questions that was raised by the jury of the witness. So they wanted to know what could have been the reason for that photo having vanished off the phone. And the witness said that he didn't know. But there's a few things here to consider. First of all, when the phone was recovered after they found the girls and taken back to the law enforcement officers, then after it had been charged, it was powered back on. And the thing is, the moment you power that back on, you lose the shutdown log. So if there was a record of that Snapchat photo in the shutdown log, it was lost the moment the phone was restarted. So you can't say that the photo was never actually taken by that particular phone. The only thing you know is that it was no longer on the phone when it was powered on by law enforcement and when the data was retrieved. So how can a Snapchat photo go missing off a phone? Well, here's the thing. Now, I don't use Snapchat, but I'm just going from what I know of iOS systems. I have a slightly newer iPhone, and there are two ways of sending photos in apps. And now I'm going to explain first in terms of Messenger. So that's Facebook Messenger. In Facebook Messenger, I can take a photo with my phone while I'm in Messenger and send that photo. That photo does not get saved onto my camera roll unless I actually tell it to save the photo. Otherwise, it just gets sent in Messenger. If I want it, I would have to go back into Messenger and retrieve it. Now, in terms of Snapchat, you can do it that way. You can use the app to take a photo and you send that photo through the app and it's not going to save it on your phone. Or you can use a photo that's already on your phone and Snapchat that photo. So I suspect that what has happened here is that the photos that were taken in the car on the way to the bridge were photos that Libby actually snapped on her phone and were in the phone album and then were sent from Snapchat. Whereas on the bridge, she probably had Snapchat open. She snapped that image of Abby, sent it through Snapchat, and didn't save it onto the phone. Now, you know how Snapchat works. When you send a Snapchat image, it's only there for so long. Once you look at it, it goes. Presumably, once you send a Snapchat image, that is also gone from your Snapchat account, presumably. So, to me, I don't think it is hugely significant that that photo is missing from the phone. I would guess that what has actually occurred is that that particular photo was taken through the Snapchat app, meaning that it was taken and sent through Snapchat and never actually saved to the photo album. So I think that they're the main points that come up from the witness who was talking about Libby's phone. And I think when you actually start to look at it logically, I don't think that the missing Snapchat photo is a concern. And I also think that the biggest thing that's come from all this is that this has completely debunked the narrative that the defence were trying to put forward, that the girls were removed from the area and brought back sometime through the night, because the phone data says that did not occur. Now, one last thing that came up through all this, and that is the question arose, what about Richard Allen's phone? Unfortunately, they were unable to retrieve Richard Allen's phone from 2017, meaning they could not match it to a tower dump, and they also could not get any data from that phone because they didn't have it. So I hope this has clarified a few things for people. I certainly found it interesting. And like I said, I don't think the missing Snapchat photo is actually something of concern. So thanks for listening. If you're new, please hit the subscribe button. Also, please hit like, and please leave a comment below. What are your thoughts on all this information that's come out about the phone? Thanks, and I'll catch you in the next one.